What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. Flashback time. About 7-8 months ago, a couple people, after watching my top 50 films of the decade 2010-2009 list, wrote in the comment section, "Hey Chad, you should do 2000-2009 next. Break it up into 2 parts." And all these months later, here it is, guys. So same thing with those 2 parts. This is going to be 2 parts. The first part's going to be number 50 to 26. And then part 2 will be number 25 to number 1, which obviously number 1 being the best movie of the decade in my opinion. Now, of course, top 50 films of 2000-2009, part 1. This is going to be something that I'm also following suit of, again, 2010-2019, where it's going to be all my number 5 picks, all my number 4 picks, all my number 3 picks, ranking them by each slot. So again, you'll see my number 5 picks with number 50. That is the least liked number 5 pick. And when I say number 5 pick, I mean I got all my top 5 movies of each year from 2000-2009, and then I decided to rank all the 5s together, 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s. So hope it's not too confusing, but again, same formula I did for the 2010-2019. It worked there. Figured I would implement it with this one too. Also, I'm going to try to keep things relatively short, just so that way it's not like a 15-minute video. But yeah, guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So, kicking off the list with my number 50 is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This is a good movie. Not my favorite Coen Brothers movie, but definitely top 5. I think that it's a very funny movie. I also think that in terms of the cinematography, it's very, very good. I love the soundtrack of this movie. The performances are top-notch. And it's just overall a very fun movie that, while watching it, you do take away a lot more than you realize. And it's a lot of fun. That's my number 50. Number 49 is a movie that hasn't reached Blu-ray yet, unfortunately, and I just haven't picked it up on DVD yet. And then my number 49 is In the Bedroom. This is a movie that it stars Marisa Tomei, Todd Wilkinson, Sissy Spacek. There's a lot of good actors and actresses in this movie, and it did get a lot of Oscar nominations when it came out back in 2001. I like this movie. I do actually want to revisit it because I've only seen it one time, but the one time I saw it, it was impactful, and I did find it to be quite a unique experience/story. Definitely would highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out just yet, and I believe it's on HBO currently. So that's my number 49. My number 48 is Catch Me If You Can, which is a Steven Spielberg movie starring Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. I really dig this movie. Actually, I first came across this movie as a young teenager, and I've seen it every now and then since then, but in terms of how many times I've seen it, probably almost a dozen times. I really like this movie, and I think that it's very captivating, and the first time you watch it, you just kind of realize how unpredictable it is. Yes, it's based on a true story, but the fun, tongue-in-cheek nature of this movie makes you feel as though it might end up a certain way, but it ends up being something else entirely different. And I liked that about this movie. I do think it's a very underrated Spielberg movie, and that is why it's on my number 48. Number 47 is a movie that, in terms of editing, I 100% back this movie up and 100% respect it to no end. And my number 47 is The Hurt Locker. Not my favorite Catherine Bigelow movie, but this is such a really good movie. I know it's inaccurate in terms of like how it depicts war. Apparently, I don't know. I haven't been in war, and I haven't been with the military and everything, but in terms of filmmaking, this is incredible. I believe it's like 200 hours of footage that they had, and then the editor had to pretty much splice it together to be a 2-hour and 10-minute movie that's both thrilling and engaging. And they did a really good job with it. I think that this movie is very effective, and yeah, that is why it's my number 47. My number 46 is actually the first foreign movie on this list. My number 46 is Downfall. This is a movie about Adolf Hitler, about his last days as Adolf Hitler, I should say. And it's a fascinating look of his days in the bunker, before he committed suicide. And I think that this is probably the best depiction of him, because I feel like so many times you see him in movies and he's either a background character, but never the forefront. So the fact that the filmmakers decided to have that in general is very ambitious. And it pays off because I think it's a very effective movie. And I first heard about this movie actually because of there's some YouTube videos that there's a scene towards the end that's pretty famous that pretty much is parodied in all these YouTube videos where they'll add different subtitles. It's very amateurish, but again, I was 14 when I came across these videos. I thought they were hilarious, but they're very immature videos. But again, I gotta thank my younger self for coming across those, because I then saw Downfall and I was like, wow, I am so glad I saw these videos, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have heard about this movie. So that's my number 46. My number 45 is The Wrestler. Darren Aronofsky, he strikes again. I think The Wrestler is such a really good movie. I think that more oftentimes than not, people kind of forget the fact that Aronofsky is a really good director. Some might find him to be pretentious, but I think that he is always firing all cylinders. Very effective filmmaker, very gritty movie, and the acting is so raw, so visceral, and so well earned in terms of like the final sequence, which basically sums up the movie as a whole. So that's my number 45. My number 44 is Mystic River. Mystic River is a really good movie. Clint Eastwood shows off his noir side, crime-esque drama, and I think that in terms of those genres, I think he does such a great job with it. Acting across the board is great. The blue hue color palette is really effective. The score is simplistic, but at the same time effective with what it's trying to achieve. And again, the twisty narrative, I think it's really good. I think in terms of why it's so twisty, it really pays off at the end. Such a really good movie. I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. And yeah, that is why it's my number 44. Coming up at number 43 is A History of Violence. Go into this movie knowing little to nothing. I didn't know anything about this movie. I saw it and I said to myself, I am so glad I saw this. This is basically Cronenberg saying how much messages and themes and just mature points can I bring up into a 95-minute movie. And he achieves it in such a very, very well done way. There are so many little details in this movie that upon multiple rewatches, it really does showcase his talent. Again, it feels so different for Cronenberg because he's used to like doing those like bloody monster esque type movies or like body transformation movies. But History of Violence, it does show off his obviously squeamish nature. But I do think that it's a movie that does fit in his wheelhouse. It's just, again, you've got to look at it from a specific angle. But nonetheless, would highly recommend History of Violence. Next up is my number 42, which is the Born Ultimatum. Saying right off the bat, this is the only Bourne film that's making the top 50 movies of the decade. It's not that I don't like the other two. Obviously, I own the trilogy. I do really like the other two, but the third one is on an entirely different level from terms of like editing, sound mixing, and just action scene perspective. I don't really like shaky camera, but this movie is an exception. The Bourne Ultimatum is a great movie, and yeah, that's why it's up there as my number 42. My number 41 is another Todd Fields movie. Todd Fields, the same guy that did In the Bedroom. My number 41 is Little Children, which I know I own the DVD, but it's because as of right now they don't have the Blu-ray out just yet. I do hope that they come out with the Blu-ray because this movie looks good on DVD, so I can only imagine how it will look in HD. I think that Little Children is a movie that's very underrated. I could actually do an entire review on this movie. In fact, I might save my thoughts for it. All I will say for now is seek this movie out. You watch this movie, you will probably be changed because it's such a great movie. It's a 2000s version of like American Beauty, but not as great as American Beauty, but it comes pretty darn close. That's my number 41. My number 40 is Unbreakable. M. Night Shyamalan did such a great job with this movie. I actually didn't like this the first time I saw it. I had to rewatch it all these years later in preparation for Glass, and I was like, yeah, I am so glad I watched this again. Because this is a nuanced movie. When I saw this at age like 15, I was expecting like a slam blam action type movie, and instead what I got was a slow, somber drama. And, as a 14, 15-year-old, you don't really like that. But watching all these years later, I was able to really appreciate that. And I'm glad that Shyamalan had the approach that he did. His long takes in this movie also are very fascinating. And I do really like James Newton Howard's score. Overall, I'm glad that this movie's getting the recognition that, it well-deserved all these years later. But stinks that it didn't get it right away. But still, that's why it is up there as number 40. Next up, number 39 is The Others. Watch this movie going into it knowing nothing. I saw this movie when I was 14. I didn't know anything about it other than my aunt recommended it to me. And actually let me borrow the DVD. So I watched it, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And when I finished it, I was like, holy cow. The last like 5-10 minutes is really creepy. And not just that, I think that this movie has, I don't want to spoil what happens the last 10 minutes, but there's something that happens, and you'll immediately say, oh, it's kind of similar to another movie, but it makes it stand out on its own. I think that's what really makes this movie work so much, because even knowing what happens in the last 10 minutes, which I did when I watched it all these years later, I watched it this past October, I still found myself engaged, and I think that that's why I decided to buy it on Blu-ray, because I was like, I can see myself wanting to show this to other people just for what happens the last 10 minutes alone, but also for me myself, I can watch this over and over again and pick up all the little details that happen in the first like hour and 30 minutes. So very good movie. That's why I spent number 39. Number 38 is, let me get it out, Before Sunset. This is the second in the Before trilogy. I like it the least amount of the three, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. I think that it's a very effective movie, especially for 80 minutes long. Really manages its time really well. And you get to care about these characters all over again. Not my favorite again, but still a very effective movie that if someone were to say is their favorite, I would completely get it because it's very well written. It's got great character, dramatic moments, and the ending, I really like the ending. So, yeah, that's my number 38. Number 37, very underrated movie, State of Play. You know, for a lot of people, Gone Girl is when people realize Ben Affleck can actually act and that it wasn't just like, you know, Good Will Hunting. State of Play is a movie that plays to Ben Affleck's strengths. Russell Crowe is the lead character in this movie, and he's also incredible. Jeff Daniels, Robin Wright Penn, Rachel McAdams, Helen Mirren. It's got such a great cast, and I feel like after watching this movie, you'll want to pick up a newspaper and even probably start, you know, printing something, because this is such a great thriller, dramatic type movie that is obviously conspiracy driven, but keep in mind, it does seem to be very relevant, especially with everything that's going on today. Would highly recommend this movie. That's my number 37. My number 36 is Curious Case of Benjamin Button. This was, I believe, my first Criterion Collection movie. I bought it on a whim, because I remember thinking it was just solid the first time, but I rewatched it a couple years ago, and this movie is really good. David Fincher, not his best movie, but still really good at what it's trying to seek out to do. I think also the thing about this movie is that the story is so epic in scope, but also romantic in distance. And I think that the two combinations are really good at trying to portray this relationship as well as this lead character. Overall, I really like this movie, and I'm looking forward to watching it a third time soon. That's my number 36. My number 35 is Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. I like this the least amount of the trilogy, but I still really like it. The Battle Helm's Deep in itself is great. I love the score. I love the acting. The storytelling is effective. Again, I don't like it as much as the other two, but I still think it's effective with what it's trying to achieve. And the ending is satisfying, whilst at the same time leaving room for a sequel that we ended up getting. So that's my number 35. Number 34, I'm not gonna lie, is the reason why I decided to redo this list, because I had this list filmed, and I deleted all the footage as soon as I uploaded it on YouTube, had it private, and then I saw this movie and I was like, well, this movie, upon rewatch, deserves to be on this top 50 list. And that movie is, of course, The New World. The New World, I decided to buy on a whim from Criterion Collection because I saw it a couple years ago. No, not a couple years ago. It was probably about 5-6 years ago, actually. That's right, about 5-6 years ago. I saw it, I thought it was good, and this was the theatrical cut that I saw. But all these years later, I kept on thinking about the cinematography and feeling as though I might have missed a little bit. And I bought it, obviously, this past July. And the great thing about this movie is right away I realized, I was like, this is a great movie. This is a near perfect movie. I saw the director's cut, but I still think that even if you were to watch the theatrical cut, I think you'll really appreciate this movie because this movie does have depth. It focuses on topics that I feel like don't really get that much focus on, and it does so in a nuanced manner at the same time. The New World is a great movie, and I would highly recommend it. Again, watch the extended cut if you get a chance. If not, the theatrical cut's fine all the same, but you're doing yourself a disfavor if you haven't seen the extended cut. My number 33 is Lost in Translation. Watch this movie late at night. I would highly recommend you do that because it's such a surreal experience. The movie itself's not too surreal, but it's definitely a movie that you feel as though you're transported into this world where these two characters are all that exist / matter, and you care about them, and their chemistry is incredible. The soundtrack is very upbeat. It's just overall such a feel-good movie that at the same time hits you with that ending, and it never forsakes realism, I feel as though. I feel like you can picture yourself as these characters, or that you know characters like these two. Great movie. That's my number 33. My number 32 is The Departed. Yeah. That one. I hope that The Departed gets a 4K release, because don't get me wrong, it looks great on Blu-ray, but holy cow, can you imagine what it would look like on 4K? The Departed is such a great movie. Again, I saw it the first time and I thought it was just solid, but each rewatch I grow to love it more and more. And now it's one of my favorite Scorsese movies. And on top of that, I think that I always said when I first saw it that Infernal Affairs was better, but I've seen Infernal Affairs once, and I've seen The Departed many, many times. Don't get me wrong, I do want to rewatch Infernal Affairs, but again, a critic should be able to admit when he's wrong, and I am wrong. I think The Departed might be better because it's so dense. It's such a tightly paced movie. It feels like it's a 2-hour movie, but it's actually over 2.5 hours. Such a great movie. My number 32. My number 31 is a movie I don't watch enough. I really need to start watching this more, but my number 31 is Zodiac. I love this movie. This is up there as one of my favorite Fincher movies, but I feel like this is just one of his movies where I always have to be in like a certain mood, and it's nothing that it's bad or anything. I think it's a perfectly paced movie, a very moody, well-acted, well-directed movie that's very realistic, but the problem I feel as though is that sometimes I'll look at the length and I'm like, well, it's not as fast as like The Girl Dragged Into or Gone Girl or Fight Club or Seven, and I feel like that's why I don't watch as much as those movies, unfortunately. But I need to change that because, again, I do think it's a great movie, very underrated, and that's why it is higher up on the list at number 31. But number 30 is Hotel Rwanda. Do I wish this movie was R-rated? Because I know that they cut out some scenes. Sure, I do wish that. But still, as a PG-13 movie, it is very hard to watch. And I also think that it's a movie that has a lot of cinematic moments. You know, there are certain moments, such as with the bus, that are just ingrained in my memory, just because of how well done it is. Joaquin Phoenix is in this. He's great. Don Cheadle's great. I just think that every single performance put in this movie is incredible, and I also really liked how this movie depicts racism. And when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, it depicts it like that it's bad. In that it's not just that it happens in one place or another. It's something that, unfortunately, and I gotta emphasize that, unfortunately, it's everywhere. And just, it's hard to stop. In fact, it's something that I feel like never will be stopped, but you can only do your part. And I know it sounds like I'm promoting a message. I'm not trying. I'm just saying that I really do think that this movie hit home that theme, that it's something that's ingrained in every single culture. And it's a shame. But Joaquin Phoenix's character said it best. You'll watch something like this on TV, and then you'll say, oh my goodness, that's terrible, and you'll go back to eating your breakfast. It's a shame, but this movie, I think, is so much more than the sum of its parts. I think that you really should watch it, and that's why it is my number 30. My number 29 is such an original movie, very, very well done, and it's a Charlie Kaufman, Spike Jonze collaboration, and that is Adaptation. Adaptation stars Nicolas Cage, Meryl Streep, and Chris Cooper, and it is one of the most original movies that you will ever see. That's all I'm going to say, because I feel like, again, kind of like a couple of these movies that I mentioned on here, such as History of Violence, this is a movie that you go into knowing as little as possible, and you'll be definitely very surprised at how much you'll like this movie. So that's my number 29. My number 28 is District 9. This actually just got announced as a 4K release. I don't know if I'm going to pick it up because I love the movie, but at the same time, I'm still kind of like, is it worth it? I don't know. Regardless, this is a movie that does a really good job at depicting xenophobia, as well as how it's not just humans, it can be aliens too, that are having this done to them. And I think also it's a really unique twist to the sci-fi alien genre. Definitely a fresh take, very unique, original, stylish, and that ending is so good, man. It's really good. That's my number 28. My number 27 is Revolutionary Road. Kate Winslet, Leonardo DiCaprio, need I say more? What I will say is that I love Kate Winslet as an actress. I think she's so talented, and in this movie, she takes it to a whole new level. I think that she should have got nominated for an Oscar. I believe she didn't get nominated, unfortunately. I think Michael Shannon was the only one that got nominated in this movie, and that's a real shame because I think that the acting from DiCaprio and Kate Winslet both are Oscar-worthy, in my opinion. It's a very effective movie with what it's saying about marriage and just that whole feeling of wanting one thing, but then the reality is that that's something that might not actually be something that can be doable. As well as just navigating communication and just relationships in general is something that I always find fascinating, and to have it in the backdrop of suburbs, it's even more up my alley. And I really like Revolutionary Road, and I would highly recommend everyone check it out. My last choice is number 26, The Last Samurai. I think this movie is very underrated. It's got great battle scenes, a great score by Hans Zimmer, excellent production design, excellent costume design, makeup. I love the story, I love the characters, I really find it intriguing, and I do think that this movie is very underrated. Again, also The Last Samurai is not saying that Tom Cruise is the last samurai. It is literally talking about the last of the samurai. It sounds better to say The Last Samurai. And even if you were to say, well, Chad, that's not the actual title. If they say The Last Samurai, if you saw the ending of this movie, you know why it's called The Last Samurai also. Again, it's not that hard to read into it. So yeah, that's my number 26. Guys, obviously I'll be giving you my number 25 to my number 1 in the next video. Stay tuned for that. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. Let me know your top 50 movies of the decade 2000-2009 in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.